People often ask us what the best gun is for a new shooter, or what we recommend. We will always say a double stack striker fired 9mm pistol. This particular gun is the Echelon from Springfield Armory. The reason we recommend this type of gun is generally because of the trigger. With the trigger returns to the same spot after you press the trigger, and it will perform the same each time you press the trigger. It's a striker fired pistol, meaning that on the inside there's an inline firing pin. When you press the trigger, that firing pin is cocked a little bit and then it gets pushed forwards, and it generally feels just about the same every time you press the trigger. What we don't recommend for a new shooter is something like a 1911. They have a hammer. Any firearm that has a hammer is not safe to carry without having a manual safety. Because of that manual safety, every time that you press the trigger, the manual safety has to be disengaged. Then, once the trigger is pressed, the firearm will operate as intended. The gun will shoot, it will cycle, and the gun will be ready to fire again. When the gun comes off the target, your finger has to come off the trigger for safety reasons, at which time the manual safety must be engaged. That's a lot of operations. So gun on target, safety off, finger on trigger, shoot the gun. Finger off the trigger, safety on. Because of that, we don't recommend a 1911 or anything in a single action for a new shooter. Similarly, with double action, single action pistols, with the double action, single action, any gun with an exposed hammer is not safe to carry in this condition. There's not a manual safety, they have a decocker. The decocker releases that hammer without the hammer coming into contact with the firing pin. Now your first trigger pull will be really long and rather heavy. The gun will shoot. Now, the second trigger pull and subsequent trigger pulls have a very light trigger, very soft, very responsive. Most people get messed up by that. You can watch what happens to the trigger as the hammer is pulled. A lot of that trigger movement is taken out as the hammer operates. So your first trigger pull on a double action, single action is really long. Subsequent trigger pulls are really short. Most people have a hard time shooting these well because of that feature. Which brings us back to the modern semi-automatic double stack striker fired pistol chambered in 9mm has a very consistent trigger pull. It does not have an exposed hammer, thus the requirement for a manual safety doesn't have to be there. These are by far the most popular firearms for a new shooter, and in my opinion, it is the safest option for a new shooter as well.